Hey guys, thanks for stopping by to check out the video today. Make sure if it's your first time stopping in, click that subscribe button down there. And don't forget to check the bell so you stay current on the recent uploads. Now, today we're going to be doing another Bass Basics episode, and we're talking about line selection. Now, it can be intimidating. If you've never fished before, you walk into a tackle shop, and you're just getting going in the sport, and you look at their line selection. I mean, they can have literally hundreds of choices out there, and it's hard to figure out what's the best for you. Now, it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but to me, choosing the right line is like choosing the right tool for the job. You wouldn't try to put in a nail with a screwdriver, and you wouldn't try to put in a screw with a hammer. Yeah, eventually you could make it work somehow, but it's easier just to use the right tool for the job. Alright, so almost all lines will fall under three major categories. It's either going to be a monofilament, a fluorocarbon, or braid. Now, I've rated all of these lines, with 1 star being the lowest and 3 being the highest, and that's comparatively in between the categories. I've rated them on stretch, which is the amount that the line will stretch when a force is applied, memory, how much memory the actual line takes on, so if it's wrapped around a spool and then you unwrap it, will it still maintain that shape? That can be bad as far as if the line has more memory on certain types of reels, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. The other thing I rated on, abrasion resistance. How much it takes to actually nick and scuff that line before it starts to lose strength. Longevity, which is how long you can get away with using the line versus, other types. If you can leave it on for the full year, whatever. And finally, big one is cost. Alright guys, so the first line we're going to be looking at, or line category, is mono. It's been around the longest. It's kind of a do-all type of line, and it's been used for pretty much everything. Thing is, it does have some drawbacks. As you can see from the ratings there, the first being stretch. Now, mono has a lot of stretch to it, and where that directly impacts you the most is on your hook set. If you have a little bit of slack in your line, normally when you go to set the hook, you have to take that slack out before any of the energy is transferred to the fish. Well, because your line stretches kind of like a rubber band does, when you set the hook with mono, it ends up taking a lot of that energy of your hook set away. Now, the other thing is, mono will also absorb water as the day goes on, so the longer you fish with it, this absorption of water actually makes it a little bit stretchier. So your hook set at the beginning of the day that was enough to get the hook into the fish might not be as good at the end of the day to actually hook into what you're going for. One of the biggest positives of mono, though, is its price point. It's readily available pretty much everywhere, and you can get pretty decent line anywhere from like $5 to $10. I mean, you can spend more, but you don't always have to get a pretty decent spool of mono. Techniques this line would probably be the best for are any type of moving type baits, like a crankbait, a spinner bait, anything that you're constantly reeling, so your line is kind of pre-tension. There's not going to be any extra slack in it to begin with, so that way you're just taking the stretch of the line out when you set the hook, and it kind of combats having that extra rubber band type effect. That would be my choice as far as what I would use mono for. Alright, so the second type of line that we're going to be looking at is fluorocarbon. Now, visually comparing it side by side to a mono, it's going to look very similar, it's going to feel similar, but the fluorocarbon is going to be a little bit harder, a little bit more wire-like, which is going to cause it to have more memory. So if you're looking at putting it on something like a spinning reel, I would try to avoid that. There's a better option for that, I believe. But the biggest attribute, I believe, to fluorocarbon is its abrasion resistance. So using it around things like rocks, wood, dock pilings, anything like that, that's where it really excels. Now, there's another rating that I don't have on there, but it would be for slackline sensitivity. So that means if you have like a big bow in your line or anything like that, fluorocarbon will transfer those vibrations to your rod better than any other line, in my opinion, if you have a slack line. It also helps as far as feel when your line isn't slack. Let's say you're dragging a jig, you'll feel more of what's down there on the bottom than you will versus a mono line. Its biggest drawback, though, is the cost. instead of that $5 to $10 per spool, you're talking probably anywhere from $15 to $50 per filler spool. Now you don't have to go all the way to the upper end. I know there's some people that do, but you can get some pretty decent stuff right around that $20 mark. So I know cruising around in chat rooms and everything, a lot of people talk about fluorocarbon stretching just as much as mono, and it's all marketing. And I'd like to clear up some of that real quick before you guys go and take a look at any of that stuff. But if the lines are dry and you're holding them in your hand and you stretch them, yes, I believe the stretch is very similar. Fluorocarbon may even stretch a little bit more. But what they forget is that monofilament is actually lighter and has a tendency to float. So if you look at this little illustration that I made up, if you're fishing a bait and it's down on the bottom, you will have a bow in your line under the water that you don't even see. Versus fluorocarbon, because it's heavier, it actually sinks. That bow is definitely minimized. There's no line that lays on top of the water. It's all going more directly to the bait. So again, like I was talking before with the stretch with the mono, how you want that kind of preloaded deal, like if you're using it with a crankbait or any type of bait that you're winding in, you already sort of have that with any bait that's stationary with fluorocarbon versus the mono, where half the line might be floating up towards the top and it's just pulling the part down right by the bait. Techniques fluoro would best be suited for would be anything around docks, brush, wood, rocks, anything like that, as far as also a bottom contact bait. Your jigs, your Texas rigs, anything like that, you're going to get more feel out of them, and also you're going to have less stretch, which is going to allow for better hookup. Last but not least, we've got Braid. As you can see from the ratings, it excels in a lot of categories, stretch being one of them. I mean, it hardly stretches at all, so almost all your hook setting power is transferred directly to the fish, which is a great advantage to have. It also has really low memory, so it excels on something like a spinning reel, because spinning reels really like low memory lines. They work the best with those. It does also work equally as well on a bait caster. The other big positive of it is its longevity. You don't have to change it on a yearly basis. I mean, you can if you want, but usually the only thing that really happens to it is it fades out, which you can re-dye with a permanent marker by running it up the last couple feet of line, if you even want to do that. You can tie a leader to it, and the fish never even see that part of the line, so it just depends on how you have it set up. Something else great about Braid is its very high strength to its diameter. Something like a 50-pound braid is actually equivalent to the diameter of a 10 to 12-pound test monofilament line. So you gain a lot of strength. It's very strong. Places it would excel in is any type of really heavy vegetation, like punching, throwing frogs around, stuff like that, flipping into reeds, cattails, all that, because Braid will actually kind of almost saw through the vegetation too, because it is so thin and so strong. It also helps with that as well. One final note when it comes to Braid, a lot of these companies out there that are producing it in the last year or two have come out with new lines that are 8 carrier braids. Now by carrier, I mean the actual fibers that are woven together, or not woven, but braided together to make the line. So 4 carrier braid uses 4, 8 would have twice as many. The advantage of the 8s is it's going to create a more round line. So it's going to lay flat or lay better on your reel. It's not going to flatten out, which you can't really see, but it does happen. It's going to be smoother, so it should flow through your guides a little bit better, make a little bit less noise, and it should help the casting distance just a little bit as well. So keep that in mind if you're going out to shop for some Braid. Alright guys, there you have it. Hopefully it gave you a little bit more information about line selection. Will help you to narrow it down next time you're out in the tackle shop or cruising around online. Thanks for stopping in today, guys. And until next time, God bless and good luck on the water.